It's my nerd world, and welcome to it. I am your host, Jon Justice, for Depeche Mode, a podcast. So, on the show this week, I realize that I'm a horrible podcast host. So, talking about the groundbreaking documentary, Spirits in the Forest, available for the first time on DVD and Blu-ray on March 27th, I failed to break down the track listing. I only thought about that after I posted the show. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit more about Depeche Mode's groundbreaking documentary, Spirits in the Forest, available for the first time on DVD and Blu-ray March 27th. And I'm going to get into the track listing and my thoughts on the actual track listing. Because I think this tour is one of the best set lists that they've had in quite a long time. Plus, Depeche Mode Violators single series box set is detailed. That is also going to be coming out. Actually, I believe that just came out. No, it'll be out in April. It's coming out in April. So the next single series box set for Violator will be coming out in April. I'll give you some details on that. And then we'll continue with our look back at past Depeche Mode albums. We are on Delta Machine, an album that I have been spending a lot of time with in the course of the past week. And I will give you all of my somewhat cogent, probably not all that enlightened commentary on my thoughts on Depeche Mode's Delta Machine. So let's go ahead and get to this show this week. I'm so glad that you are with my nerd world and Depeche Mode, a podcast.
My nerd world.
It is my nerd world and a Depeche Mode podcast with your host, Jon Justice. And again, I'm glad you're back with the show this week. I really do appreciate it. If you want to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube if you are listening to the show on YouTube. And if you want to support this podcast or any of the My Nerd World podcast, the way to do that is by supporting my attempts to be an author. 2 books in my science fiction space opera series have already been released. It's called Embark. Embark Book 1 and Treasure in Darkness. I'll have more details at the end of the show. But if you're a science fiction fan, and clearly if you're a Depeche Mode fan, I can't encourage you enough to go and purchase these books, because as a massive Depeche Mode fan and a massive Star Wars and science fiction fan, that's one of the biggest reasons why I wrote this book. And Depeche Mode is included in a big way on a number of different levels in these stories. Starting with the main character, Taft Gardia, who is a massive Depeche Mode fan, even though this is set hundreds of years in the future. So, again, I'll get to more details on that a little bit later on in the show. But let's get into it. And starting off with, I got to apologize, because last week I talked about Spirits in the Forest and my thoughts on it, and I didn't go through the track listing. And I was like, wow, I suck and failed as a talk show host. So I'm going to take care of that this week. So I'm glad you're with the show again this week, and my apologies for not giving more details on the track listing for this big release coming up here in a few weeks. So the article I'm looking at now with regard to Spirits in the Forest is from Vents Magazine, and they write this: following widespread tastemaker press, fan praise, and global box office success, Depeche Mode, along with Sony Music Entertainment, will release their boundary-breaking feature-length documentary and concert film, Depeche Mode Spirits in the Forest, on DVD and Blu-ray on March 27th. The band announced the news on their social media. Fans can already pre-order it right now. This is a special 4-disc, 2 video discs plus 2 audio discs configuration, presenting the definitive Depeche Mode Spirits in the Forest experience, and at its most immersive. And again, available in both DVD and Blu-ray. It includes 2 video discs. This will be the Spirits in the Forest documentary, alongside, and what I'm most excited about, is live spirits filmed at the final 2 shows of the Global Spirit Tour in Berlin. This footage has never been previously released or broadcast in its entirety, so we're getting the whole show. In addition to the 2 video discs, the package includes 2 CDs containing the Live Spirits soundtrack, live audio recording from the performance. The package promises to be essential for collectors, longtime fans, and newcomers alike. So, let me back up here really quick and talk a little bit about my concert experience. This has been... I have not been able to replicate this yet because it's almost been impossible to do so. But in my early Depeche Mode fandom, and specifically starting with the Music for the Masses tour, and then going into World Violation, and then going to the devotional tour. Okay, there was no tour for Ultra. I did go to those one of those one-off shows that took place, so it kind of rings true for that. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about in a moment. You get to the singles tour, it definitely rang true for that. But then after the singles tour, then we kind of got into this territory where the set lists were readily available. And that's what I'm talking about. Those tours up until probably Exciter, there was an element of surprise and joy going to those shows and not knowing what songs they were going to play. I will never forget. And for whatever reason, it's the Songs of Faith and Devotion tour that sticks out the most for me. But the first night that I saw that tour, because I don't know, I saw that tour with 10 different shows for that tour, I think, or something like that. I went to San Jose with my friend. Actually, it's funny because I reconnected with him. It was my friend Forrest Meadows at the time. And actually just had an opportunity to reconnect with him through this podcast on Instagram, for crying out loud. I believe that's where he found it. I think he heard my voice and was like, "Hey, I know that guy." But we were really good friends back in the 80s and in the early 90s and mid 90s. But I remember going to that show, and I can still remember the feeling of before the band came out, not knowing what to expect because I hadn't seen any of the footage yet of what the stage looked like or anything. And then we had the big curtains. You had what was like lightning going off behind him and the blue lights with the start of Higher Love in it. And then as they moved through the set list, just how incredible it was where the moment when you recognized what the next song was and just that feeling, that rush of emotion, that your dopamine kicking in of, oh my gosh, they're doing Walking in My Shoes, or they're doing Mercy in You, or he's doing Death's Door Tonight. It was so amazing. And it was like that for the Music for the Masses too, although that show I was young and inebriated, but be that as it may. And certainly like that for the Violator tour, right? And then once you get further on, the only real surprises are when Martin would go and kind of switch up his acoustic sets. But as time goes on, the set lists are readily available, and even on the Depeche-Mode website and the home message board, they have their relays where people will go and actually post what the tracks are being played at the different concerts throughout a particular tour. I attempted to avoid the set list on the Spirit tour and kind of did okay. I didn't seek it out. And it was more of like happenstance when I ended up seeing what songs were played because I wanted to replicate that experience. And when Depeche Mode makes another album and tours again, because we're getting closer and closer to the last time they'll be doing this, I may just have to try to really put forward the effort to keep myself completely spoil-free going to see the live show just to have that experience one more time of discovering the concert as the band performs and then getting excited over the songs they're playing, not realizing they were going to play them. There was a moment on this last tour when they did Useless, and I did not know that they were going to do Useless on this tour. So that was a complete shock to me. And I was overjoyed in Chicago when they started playing Useless up on stage. So here's the set list. And I think this set list that they did for this tour was really solid. The band's got such a large catalog now to pull from. They've talked frequently over the past few albums about the difficulty of choosing which songs to play. And if you're like me, and maybe I'll do this on a subsequent podcast, but if you're like me, I have many times put together like the kind of set list that I would love to see, the song they would open with, what the acoustic ones would be, what they would wrap up on, and trying to create like the perfect Depeche Mode Jon Justice show. So the intro, and then we go into going backwards, and I'm just going to run through this list and share some thoughts on these different versions. I thought going backwards translated well live. It's No Good is the third track. It translates well live. Good choice, by the way, and I think they switched that up because initially The one thing that does bum me out is I know that there was quite a few tracks that actually changed. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to grab my Spirits album right now and look it over really quick, because there's one, So Much Love. I believe they were doing So Much Love for the longest time at the first half of the tour, and then they dropped it later on, and I would have liked to have seen that live. But anyway, so we have, and I lost my place. There we go. It's No Good. Then we roll into the remix version of A Pain That I'm Used To, and I really like that kicked-up remix version that they use live, very much in the same vein of what they did with In Your Room. And then we get to sort of the trifecta of great live tracks. Useless, Precious, and World in My Eyes. You know, I mean, come on. You can't go wrong with any of those in a live setting. I thought Cover Me actually translated well. I adore that song, and I was very curious to see how it was going to come off in a live setting just because of the pacing of it, but I really thought that extended instrumental portion at the second half of the song played really well in a live setting. Things You Said and Insight are the two songs for Martin on here. Fantastic choices. Insight is a classic that doesn't get enough recognition, in my opinion, and I probably didn't give it enough attention in my Ultra revisit. Things You Said, again, another classic going back to the Music for the Masses era. And then Poison Heart. I adore Poison Heart, probably my favorite song on Spirit. The live version of it was good. I wouldn't say it was great, but it kind of fell in line with Where's the Revolution for me, because that's the next one after Poison Heart. And I personally thought that Where's the Revolution did not come off as strong as I expected it to in a live setting. I was really, really surprised that it just, for whatever reason, Where's the Revolution fell flat. And that was a song that I like, but was really surprised that it didn't translate better to a live setting. And then we're down into the latter half of the concert, and we're down to the classics. So Everything Counts, Stripped, Enjoy the Silence, Never Let Me Down Again. All the versions that they did on this tour of those songs were fantastic. Enjoy the Silence was different. They switched that up every tour. I think that's cool that they do. I would be interested to see on the next tour, because they'll do Enjoy the Silence. I would like to see them on the next tour just do a straight-up version that sounds like the album version. I think it would be really fun to have the band switch it up, get off of doing sort of the remix donut around it. That's what I call it. So, when it comes to Enjoy the Silence and Never Let Me Down Again's like that, Personal Jesus is like that too, but they do this remix donut where they start off with a different intro, then the heart of the song is pretty much the same as the album version, and then they wrap it up with another remix. It would be really cool for me to see them do just the straight-up album version to see how that sounds with Enjoy the Silence. And then you get to I Want You Now, which again is a good choice for a Martin track. And then Heroes, and I am not a fan of the David Bowie version of Heroes, but I really love the Depeche Mode version of it. I think Dave's vocals fit it perfectly. The guitar work that Martin does on Heroes is absolutely fantastic. And it translated well live. So a really good choice to have a cover on this tour, and that particular cover fits really well. Then we get into Walking in My Shoes and Personal Jesus. Always sound great live. And then they end on, and I'm going to be honest, they end on Just Can't Get Enough, and if I went to my grave without ever hearing Just Can't Get Enough again, I would be just fine. It's a fun song. I respect the history of Just Can't Get Enough, but it is far from my favorite Depeche Mode song. I'll listen to it on occasion, but it's not one that I gravitate towards, and certainly not one that I recommend to people who are just getting introduced to Depeche Mode for the first time. And People Are People falls into that category too. Both those songs, while I understand their history with the band and how important that history is, just not, again, for me, a true representation of what Depeche Mode is all about. They're nice little snapshots into that period in their history. But the band has gone so far since both of those tracks, and certainly Just Can't Get Enough. I get it. I know why they do the crowd pleasers. It's funny to me because, and this goes back to my Star Wars and pop culture fandom, right? And I mentioned this on a previous episode, that it's so great to also be a Depeche Mode fan along with being a Star Wars fan, because Star Wars fans tend to be jerks to each other if the movies don't go down the way that they want them to go down. There's not a lot of live and let live, agree to disagree within the Star Wars fandom, but there is that in the Depeche Mode fandom. And you don't hear complaints from the fans, and I'm not going to say it because I don't think that's the case. I understand why Depeche Mode puts that in their set list, because it is a crowd pleaser and it's fun to wrap the show up on. But you don't hear fans going, that's fan service. Because you could. You could easily go and make a criticism, well, Depeche Mode's just pleasing the fans by doing Just Can't Get Enough, even though it's one of their weakest songs. No, man, I get it. It makes the crowd happy, and not everybody is as hardcore as you or me listening to Depeche Mode podcasts. But that's what's great about the fandom. In the Star Wars fandom, you include something in one of the newer movies that's from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, and it's fan service, and I just can't. I love you guys in the Depeche Mode fandom. I love most of you guys in the Star Wars fandom. All right, let's shift gears before we talk a little Delta Machine and Depeche Mode 12-inch vinyl singles collector edition box set. Available on April 24th. This comes from the Music Universe. Depeche Mode continues to release their box sets. Violator the 12-inch singles will be out on Rhino Records. The collection is a collector's edition deluxe box set containing 10 12-inch vinyl discs showcasing the singles Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth, and World in My Eyes, and the key B-sides and mixes contemporaneous to Depeche Mode's watershed album Violator. From their earliest days as a band, Depeche Mode have championed 12-inch vinyl, embracing the singular power of the format and the avenues of innovation the format opened. The 12-inch single allowed the band to explore new sonic possibilities, while the tactile physical beauty of the packaging gave Depeche Mode room to develop a sophisticated and commanding visual aesthetic. That's quite the word vomit there. And this is coming from an author. I say that in jest. Depeche Mode used their singles discography as a means of offering left field remixes and other delights for fans. By the way, I'd never heard that left field. I've seen that described often, left field, but as an alternative rock fan, it's just like another. Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. I am not. I mean, I know what left field is now, but I'm just wondering sort of where that derived from. I'd be curious to hear from you. Violator extended Depeche Mode's increasingly mind-blowing run of 12-inch singles, with a virtually unprecedented number of remixes for Personal Jesus alone. Violator introduced fans to some of the most enduring songs of the DM catalog, which includes Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth, and World in My Eyes. The box set contains the original and special edition versions of each single, including etched vinyl versions of Enjoy the Silence, the blue-sealed edition of World in My Eyes, plus a bonus promo 12-inch of World in My Eyes, which features exclusive rarities. Rhino's first two box sets, Speak and Spell, the singles, and A Broken Frame. Singles in August with the second batch of Construction Time Again, the 12-inch singles and Some Great Reward. The 12-inch singles arriving in December 2018. Rhino also released the Depeche Mode Black Celebration 12-inch singles and Music for the Masses on May 31st of 2019. Each boxed set in the series contains the singles from each Depeche Mode album on audiophile quality 12-inch vinyl with audio mastered from the original tapes. The artwork for each exterior of the box sets draws on the iconography inspired by the original releases, while the vinyl sleeves themselves feature the original single artwork. The Depeche Mode 12-inch singles will continue over the coming years, with plans to release boxes containing the singles from each of the band's albums in similar deluxe audiophile-grade collector's edition. And then it runs through all of the track listings, which I won't get into all of it here. I do want to mention some of the B-sides, though. Collide remix. I love Collide. That's what opened the World Violation Tour. There's a couple of different versions on here. The When Worlds Collide mix and just the Collide remix. And then, of course, we get Happiest Girl and Sea of Sin as the other B-sides. Two tracks that I absolutely love, but totally agree as to why they did not end up appearing on the album themselves. I really do agree with that assessment. So I do not collect the 12 inches. I have a lot of older 12 inches of Depeche Mode that I keep stacked away. One day I'll probably pick up another record player, but right now I have nothing in my among my equipment to play vinyl at this point in time. So that's why I haven't picked up any of these particular 12-inch singles. That'll be something like on a bucket list item when I retire and I can sit around drinking wine and listening to Depeche Mode on vinyl. Then maybe I'll go and I'll pick those up. All right, let's switch gears, and for the second half of the show, let's talk a little Depeche Mode and Delta Machine.
My Nerd World.
I spent a lot of time this week with Delta Machine, and oddly, found myself liking the album a lot more than I thought I did, which was really surprising to me, because if I go back and listen to my own shows, I think I probably said it was one of my least favorite of the recent releases. And I got to tell you that I actually really do like this album on a revisit listen. Let's start off first with the packaging of it, because I got a couple of interesting comments to make on this. So about, I don't know, it felt like a year. I don't think it was that long, but probably at least 6 months. Depeche Mode put out a promo video on the making of Delta Machine. And it was a black and white video, and it included Angel, which is the second track on the album. And I'll never forget watching this promotional video, for the very first time, and thinking to myself, hearing Angel for the first time, that it was a demo version, because it seemed very sparse. I liked the song, and I remember the first time I heard it, it really grabbed me in that way that the first listen of a Depeche Mode song tends to do. But I remember thinking, this doesn't sound finished. I think they're going to add more to it. And they didn't, which is fine. It tells you kind of where my head was at the time, for me personally. I was really thinking that this seemed it had a very sort of exciter minimalist feel to it. And it was specifically the drums. I miss those big beats, those big drum beats that we got, especially with like what you'd hear, the strong keyboard sounds of like Precious, but you go back and listen to Violator, and it's just got those big driving beats. And this had more of that clicky feel to it, like Exciter did. Be that as it may, Angel is one of my favorite songs off this album. I just remember being a little bit thrown off, thinking that it wasn't complete. And that probably was partly due to the fact that they released the song so early that I thought they were just giving us a taste. You know, like they've done in promotion from the past, where they've just released like 30 seconds of a song. I thought, okay, they're giving us a demo version of what Angel was. But no, it actually turned out to be the actual track. And it's very much in line with the rest of this album, too, in terms of the way that it sounds sonically. But before I get to the track listing, I just want to talk a little bit about the artwork. I really do like the artwork for this. I like the name Delta Machine. This was a topic of conversation that I mentioned on last week's show on the Halo message board of people and Depeche Mode fans talking about how they kind of wish Depeche Mode would get out of this blues rock. Some people were saying rut that they're in, but you know their music has kind of morphed into this electronic bluesy feel that's been there for a long, long time. Was definitely evident on the Violator record. It certainly became more apparent on Songs of Faith and Devotion. Two records that I thought it worked really, really well on, but I can understand why some people are like, I wish they'd get back to something a little bit more heavy on the electronic bass and a little bit less on the bluesy bass. But this album definitely has that blues tinge to it. And the title in and of itself of Delta Machine, right? Southern Delta, New Orleans has that vibe. The cover artwork I thought was interesting. I really like it. I think the font that Anton Corbijn used for Depeche Mode and Delta Machine matching, the use of triangles, the way that Depeche Mode went and translated that, and Anton did in the stage performance, I thought was pretty rad. The red and white of the cover was cool. This is just a photo taken by Anton from where they were filming in New York. What's cool about it is that when I finally had the opportunity to go to New York a couple of years back, it was in, I want to say 2018, I saw those water towers, and at first I thought that I was actually looking at the water tower from the cover of Delta Machine before I realized that those water towers are all over New York. But I have I had the special edition in my hand. It's got the 2 discs. The second disc has Long Time Lie, Happens All the Time, Always, and All That's Mine, and I'll get to that in a second because I want to talk about the songs. But the packaging for this is really, really good. The color Anton photos in here are fantastic. As always, the black and white ones are great. I'm flipping through it right now. Anton's just such an amazing photographer and just does such great things with the band. It's just the photographs just scream Depeche Mode, even though it's Anton Corbijn. So I really do like the packaging for this particular album. The album itself is different. I do like it. Like I said, I've been revisiting it lately, and I remember the band seeming like they were very disappointed with Sounds of the Universe, and people around. I think Daniel Miller even said that, but people around the promotion of the album said that they were a bit disappointed with how Sounds of the Universe turned out, and so they were trying to stretch themselves and extend themselves with this album. And this album does feel very much like a transition album that leads into Spirit, but it is very different. Missing from this record, I think, are some of the more melodic parts that Depeche Mode does well and that Martin Gore does well. Some of the tracks are really strong, but there are missing melodies in here that have become sort of the standard, in my opinion, when it comes to Depeche Mode writing, and they're not there's not that in some of these tracks. So, Welcome to My World's a great song. I really like that. I didn't think it translated very well on the live tour as an opening track, and again, because it's a little bit simpler. It's a strong song, it's an epic song, but it just doesn't. I don't know. From a live setting, it just didn't. The pacing of it didn't really lend itself to opening of a live show. Just my opinion personally. I think if they had taken maybe a little bit different approach to it and done something a little bit more like what they did with Higher Love on the Devotional Tour that I mentioned earlier, that maybe it would have come off better. And I'm mentioning all this because I actually watched the Live in Berlin live CD this past week too, or live DVD this past week too. Like I said, Angel I think is a great track. I really like the second half of that song. When it kicks in, it's fantastic. Heaven is my least favorite song on the album, and arguably my least favorite song of the band my least favorite single from the band in many, many years. That song just did not do anything for me. It didn't do anything for me when it was first released. I liked it because it was new Depeche Mode, but there's that missing, what do they call the middle eight? There's a missing transition in that song that the song never reaches the height that I think that I want it to, because it misses that transition that is in so many Depeche Mode songs. Wrong pops into mind. If you watch the documentary for Sounds of the Universe, and specifically when they were working on making Wrong and how much tinkering they did to get that do-do-do, do-do-do, and the breakdown before the song kicks back in again, Heaven doesn't have that. It just felt like there was something missing. Secret to the End is a song that I keep going back and forth on. There's sometimes I listen to it and it just grabs me and I love it. And other times I kind of shrug my shoulders a little bit. At the moment, I'm on a very much like that song. It's hitting me on all the right places as of late. My Little Universe is a track that I didn't think that I would love, and I absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, I love the other Martin Gore song on here, even though this one isn't, but this is a slower tune. I really like My Little Universe. It sounds like something that Martin would have put on a solo record, whether it's MG or whether it's Counterfeit 1 or 2. It is very different. It's different lyrically. I do like the way it kind of grows and grows and then builds to this electronic crescendo in the second part of it. My Little Universe is a really cool little track. I Adore Slow. That was a song written that was originally, if my memory serves me correctly, supposed to be for Songs of Faith and Devotion, which makes sense. But I really do like Slow a lot. It's one of my other favorite tracks on the album. Hands down, favorite track on the album. Hands down, favorite Dave Gahan song he's ever made. Easy, Broken. Broken is classic Depeche Mode. I love that song. It's easily in my top 10 all-time favorite Depeche Mode songs ever, if not in the top 5. I adore that song. I can't say enough good things about it. Broken is a fantastic song, and Depeche Mode at its best, in my opinion. The Child Inside is quirky, a little creepy, a little perverse, and I dig it. That's all I'm going to say. I dig The Child Inside. Then you get the Soft Touch and Raw Nerve. That's a cool song. It's the typical Depeche Mode song. It is the It's No Good. It is the So Much Love of this record. They have the one track where it's the Soothe My Soul, even though that's on this album too, but I really do like Soft Touch, Raw Nerve. Then we get to Should Be Higher. I have a love-hate relationship with Should Be Higher. That is a song that I should love, but there's a part of it that I hate. I do not like, I'm just being honest, I do not like Dave's high-pitched vocals in that song. I do not like when he goes into that tone. The rest of the song is rad. I remember watching the David Letterman performance. That was the first time that I heard Should Be Higher, and when it started, the opening, dun 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 dun, fantastic, classic Depeche Mode, but then we get the lies all out. That just doesn't do anything for me at all. Yeah. Probably because I can't sing along to it. Because I can't hit those. I can't hit the low notes either, but at least I pretend like I can. Really love Alone. Alone is a track, and probably one of the tracks along with Broken that I've listened to the most. If you would go into my iTunes and look at the number of times played, Alone was one of my bedtime songs. I listened to that one a lot going to sleep. Soothe My Soul, classic Depeche Mode. Video was unique and cool. Great single, great rhythm to it. A little bit creepy, a little bit perverse, but I like it. And then Goodbye. Goodbye is a strong closing track. It falls in line with a lot of other Depeche Mode closing tracks. When it comes to, Goodnight Lovers or Insight. No, Goodbye is a solid song. Like I said, I actually, revisiting this album, like it a lot more than I thought I did. It does feel like the band was searching for something in the recording process, still trying to grab that, like Dave has said in so many interviews over the course of many of the last albums. They always feel like they have the next best album in them. And Delta Machine feels like it was a band that was trying to achieve that. Didn't quite get it. We don't get quite to the Songs of Faith and Devotion, Violator, Music for the Masses, Black Celebration level. Even though you get little hints of it in there with a few of the tracks that I love, especially Broken and Angel and even Soft Touch, Raw Nerve. But when you look at the B-sides on here, Long Time Lie, Happens All the Time, Always, and All That's Mine. Really interesting tracks. But all four of those songs lack that catchy hook in all of them, and I understand why they left them off the album. I'm really glad they gave it to us in a B-side form, but I totally get why they left them off the album. Of the four, Long Time Lie, All That's Mine, Always, and Happens All the Time, All That's Mine probably is my favorite. That was a B-side on Heaven, and I remember I got exposed to that one pretty early into the release process for Delta Machine. I enjoy all four of the songs, but again, they just lack that little something, and that little something, in my opinion, is that sort of catchy hook. And that's a problem with a couple of tracks on this album. Secret to the End has that too. It just didn't, it goes and it trucks along and it moves, but it just misses that little tiny bit of a hook. But again, this is placing a lot higher in my, sort of on my list than I had anticipated it did on the first blush, just looking at all the albums. So what do you think? Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or go and leave a comment on YouTube. I'd love to hear your thoughts and share them with you on next week's show, where we get into Spirit. We're finally to Spirit. Oh my gosh, I've actually done it on the albums. This is amazing. I can't believe I actually made it. So before I wrap the show up today, I do want to share with you one email that I got. Depeche Mode is included in this email, but this is a listener to my Star Wars podcast. But they get into some music and they talk about a bit of the music from and the mentions of that in my book. So if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I want to read this to you. It comes from a friend of the show, Severin, who writes this: "Hey John, my husband gave me both Embark books for my birthday on Sunday. I started reading the first book almost immediately, and I have 3 thoughts. I love this story." That's the first thought, all capital letters. Then, I don't know why, but I get the feeling Ashley, he's one of the main characters of the group of characters in the book. And as I've talked about, the story is very much set in the future on Earth, and it's kind of a crossover. It's a combination of Fast and Furious when it comes to the vehicles and the friendships involved. That's kind of where that was inspired from. Not the biggest fan of that franchise, but I thought the idea of young people who didn't have street cars they were modifying, but they had flying vehicles that could go in atmosphere and in space set in the future could make for a really interesting scenario in a society where flight culture, air and space flight culture, replaced the car culture that we have now in society and especially in America. So it's a combination of Fast and Furious, the fun and adventure and lived-in world of Star Wars with the technology, and then pop culture references of the stuff that I love, including in a big way Depeche Mode like Ready Player One. But she says this, Ashley's one of the characters, she's kind of the tech nerd of the friendship in the first book, likes Daft Punk more than any other nostalgic band from the 90s and 2000s, and I create a scenario in the books where, even though this is set a couple hundred years in the future on Earth, those in the story are nostalgic for the music of the time period that I live in. So that way I could kind of play with the music that I love. I thought I'd let you know that's my headcanon, that Ashley likes Daft Punk. I haven't gotten to any point in the book where you state what group or band he must like. I've also been a Depeche Mode junkie, but I'm pretty sure this book is going to turn me into a Depeche Mode fan too, and I'm okay with that. And then number 3, to anyone who hasn't tried these books yet, if you like a good slow burn romance, I recommend Embark Book 1. So far, there is a very intriguing dynamic between the two protagonists. I haven't finished it yet, but at this rate, I'm going to have it read by the end of the week, and I believe she has, and she really liked it. Can't wait to read the whole trilogy. I really hope you write more. I am, and I really don't want to say goodbye to these characters, and I haven't even finished the first book. So, yes, there will be more books. The Vanishing War has a tentative release date for April 24th in ebook and paperback, and then the audiobook for The Vanishing War will be out sometime in mid-March. And then the first spin-off story before I get into the next saga. So Book 3 of The Vanishing War will wrap up this trilogy, and it'll close that story out. But then in this universe, you're going to get a spin-off story, an Embark adventure that should be out sometime in mid-July, and then the 5th book and the start of the next saga book. And this is very much like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they have the solo stories and then they have the larger tales. I'm doing the same thing with my stories as well. That'll be out sometime either very end of this year or the first of next year. So, with all of that being said, please head on over to Amazon.com right now, and if you are a sci-fi fan, or as my wife said, because she does the copy editing on these books, she does a fantastic job, because she's smarter than I am, they really do cross all genres. These are space opera, science fiction adventures, but they really are human stories and stories of struggle of good and evil. And so I think, as Severin has shown here, even she said in other emails as we've exchanged, she hasn't been the biggest sci-fi reader, even though she's a sci-fi fan, and she really has enjoyed these books. So please head on over to Amazon.com and pick up your preferred choice of version, whether it's ebook, paperback, or audiobook. And this is the perfect time, too. The Vanishing War is coming out. Beta readers love the book. Really excited to get it out there. And again, that should be out next month. So you have some time right now to pick up the first 2 books and then get caught up on the story before the third one in the trilogy gets released. Go to Amazon.com, search for Jon, Jon Justice, and Embark, and you'll find the first 2 books there available, and you can gift them to a friend if you've already picked up your copy. So before I wrap up the show this week, one more quick hit. This is a little Embark ad that I did for the books. If you don't know what they are about, this will give you a bit of a taste, and then I'll be back in 1 minute to close out this week's Depeche Mode podcast. For Earth, the end is near. Only a reluctant hero and the girl he loves have the power to save humanity's future. It's the not-so-distant future, and car culture is replaced by air and space flight, made possible by 2 of Earth's largest corporations. Flight mechanic Taft Guardia spends his free time racing through the skies with his 3 best friends and the girl he longs to be with, headstrong Keith Amaro. With the planet on the brink of an industrial apocalypse, a powerful and ruthless corporate madman, Sint Argum moves to exploit the disaster with his covertly created military. When Taft, Catha, and their friends uncover a shocking secret, Sint Argum will stop at nothing to find them. Time on Earth is running out, but with the help of a ragtag group of young pilots, they'll fight for humanity's future and survival among the stars.
My Nerd World.
And that wraps up a Depeche Mode podcast for this week. talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment on YouTube if you are listening to the show there. Thank you so much, as always, for checking the show out, and it really would mean the world to me if you'd head on over to Amazon.com right now and pick up your copy of either book or both books and embark. The ebook is $2.99 right now, and the paperbacks are priced to sell as well. So go and pick up your copy. And purchase of the ebook gets you a massive discount on the audiobook, narrated and produced by me. So, all right, that's it. Thanks so much for supporting my attempt to be an author and listening to my Nerd World, the Depeche Mode podcast. I'll be back again next week. Bye.